That night started like any other, except that my wife Sophie looked too perfect for a work dinner. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting her necklace, her perfume lingering heavy in the air. I watched her zip up her sleek black dress, something far too elegant for a casual dinner with a colleague. "You look nice," I said casually, testing the waters. She smiled without looking at me. "Thanks, babe. Don't wait up. It might run late." I nodded, pretending not to notice the faint nervousness in her tone. I'd heard that line too many times over the past few months. Working late, team meeting, client drinks. It was the same script, just a different excuse. The truth had been whispering to me for weeks, hushed phone calls ending when I walked in, mysterious texts from unknown numbers, and that sudden distance that only a guilty heart can create. But I didn't confront her right away. I wanted the truth to come out on its own. And fate, it seemed, had perfect timing. Earlier that day, I'd run into Marianne, Sophie's boss, a sharp, confident woman who didn't mince words. We'd spoken before at company events. But this time, she was the one who approached me. "Ethan," she said, looking serious. "I think you should know. Sophie and that colleague of hers, Daniel, they're not exactly discreet." My stomach dropped, but Marianne wasn't the type to gossip. She had evidence, photos, messages, and even reports from other employees. "I'm sorry," she said. "She's been careless. But if you want closure, maybe I can help." That's when the idea came to life. A mix of heartbreak, anger, and something colder. I told Marianne I wanted one thing, to let Sophie see what losing control really feels like. She smirked and agreed to help. "Dinner 8 p.m. at Elvina. We'll make it memorable," she said. I didn't know what I'd feel when I saw her. Rage, sadness, maybe even pity, but I knew I needed her to see what she'd done through the reflection of her own shock. Hours later, Sophie texted me, "Dinner's running late. Don't wake up red hearts." The same tired lie she'd used before. I didn't reply. Instead, I put on my suit, picked up Marianne, and we headed to Elvina, the same high-end restaurant Sophie often claimed to have client dinners at. The hostess seated us by the window, and as Marianne and I talked, I realized she was sharper than I'd imagined. "You know," she said, swirling her wine. "Sophie's good at her job, but she let emotions cloud her judgment. That's dangerous in both business and marriage." I smiled faintly. "I used to think loyalty was her strength," I replied. Marianne gave a short, cold laugh. "Oh, it was until she decided she could have everything and lose nothing." Half an hour later, the universe decided to put on a show. Through the glass door, I saw Sophie hand in hand with Daniel walk into the same restaurant. Her laughter carried across the room, her head tilted toward him like they were sharing secrets. I didn't move. Marianne noticed them too and smirked, whispering, "Showtime." The hostess led Sophie and Daniel to a table not far from ours. They hadn't seen us yet. I leaned closer to Marianne and said something that made her laugh softly, the kind of laugh that carries in a quiet restaurant. That's when Sophie turned. Her face drained of color instantly. Her eyes locked on me, then shifted to Marianne. Her smile vanished, her grip on Daniel's hand loosening. I could almost see the calculations racing behind her eyes. Panic, confusion, disbelief. Marianne, ever the professional, smiled sweetly and raised her glass. "Good evening, Sophie," she said. "Didn't expect to see you here." Sophie's lips trembled. Marianne. "What are you having dinner?" Marianne interrupted smoothly. "With your husband." Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. The color drained from his face. "Wait, your husband," he stammered, realizing just how deep he'd stepped into the fire. Sophie reached for words, but none came. "Ethan, I can explain." She started, voice cracking. I smiled politely, my tone calm, but cold. "Don't bother. I think Marianne's HR department already has the details." Her jaw dropped. You told her she already knew," I replied. "You just didn't know I did, too." Marianne leaned forward slightly, her voice smooth but razor-sharp. "Sophie, consider this your official notice. We don't tolerate internal relationships that violate ethics, especially ones that humiliate our company's reputation. You're terminated. Effective immediately. The restaurant went silent. Sophie's hand shook, tears forming in her eyes. Daniel quickly stood, muttered something about needing to leave, and bolted out the door like a coward. I stood up too, dropping a few bills on the table. "Marianne," I said politely. "Thank you for dinner." She nodded with a smile that could slice glass. Sophie reached for my arm, whispering, "Ethan, please don't go." I looked down at her, my voice calm, but final. "You left long before I did, Sophie. I'm just catching up." Then I walked out, leaving her standing there, heartbroken, jobless, and completely alone. A few weeks later, I got a letter, not from her, but from Marianne. Closure. It read enclosing Sophie's resignation papers and a note from Sophie herself. She'd written that she regretted everything, that she'd lost not just her husband, but her career and self-respect. I folded it neatly, set it on fire, and watched it burn to ash. Some things aren't meant to be read twice. And as I stood there by the window watching the city lights flicker, I realized something. Revenge isn't loud, and it's not cruel. It's quiet, calculated, and best served when the guilty destroy themselves with just a little nudge from